Welcome to my home recording and YouTube studio tour for the start of 2022. I've been working in this room for years now and started making YouTube videos seriously at the start of 2021, so it's evolved a lot over the last year. In the last month, I've done some major changes, building a new desk, which means setting up the camera angles and lighting differently. I'm going to show you all the various things I've done to set up and optimize this space for both video and recording, but first, let's take a walk in the snow. This room is about 16 feet by 13 feet, roughly 210 square feet or 19.5 square meters. It's not tiny, but not big either. It's big enough for my needs, but using the space efficiently is very important. For the last several years, I've had my acoustic drum kit taking up a good chunk of that real estate, as well as keyboards and other gear, and the room was starting to be pretty cramped. It was simply too much gear for the space, and that led to constantly having to move big pieces around to shoot different scenes or record different instruments. I've been able to reorganize everything and make some huge improvements and clear up a lot of floor space. But first, let's look at how it was set up and what the problems were. There are 3 built-in closets in this room, and my old desk was built in between 2 of them. This seemed like a good use of space, but it also caused several problems. The first is space. The width and depth of my desk was fixed, so my studio monitor placement was dependent on that, meaning my speakers were closer together than I would want, hurting the stereo image, and limiting speaker choice. I've also had no room to fit a MIDI keyboard on the desk, and I've always wanted to have the piano right there, hooked up, so I can just use it without leaving the desk and dragging the keyboard over. I wasn't using my keyboard as often as I would like, simply because it was inconvenient and slowed down my work. I kept it next to the desk for months, which worked well enough, but since adding an electronic drum kit into the equation, I couldn't fit both at once, and I used both frequently. The other main issue was sound. Being built in between 2 walls meant having this little chamber for the speakers, causing all sorts of reflection and filtering issues. It's extremely difficult to make a good mix without accurate monitoring. Making EQ decisions without being able to hear correctly what you're doing leads to all sorts of balance and translation issues, and this is one reason that for years I've struggled with mixes translating from my desk to other systems, and was constantly having to check in my car to see if I got it right. On top of that, it just wasn't the most enjoyable listening experience, which made it much less enjoyable to mix in or listen to other music for reference. I didn't fully realize these problems until I'd set up another set of monitors in a different part of the room at a better width, and realized just how much I was missing. Once I heard what could be, I just couldn't go back, so I had to fix this situation and get out of my little box. And I had a couple priorities for a new desk. It had to be big enough to fit my 88-key digital piano, while still having room for a mouse and a keyboard. And that would provide enough width for the speakers too. I also wanted a riser on the back for speaker height as well as cable management. I have tons of cables in my life that all have a purpose, but as much as possible, I don't want to see them. Nobody should have to live in a spider web of black spaghetti, and it just looks bad on video. The desk also has to be sturdy, as I have a lot of heavy equipment on it, and I wanted to do it for as cheap as possible. Sounds easy, right? I went with an IKEA desk for price and flexibility. I put out a video on all the details, so if you want more depth on that, you can check it out over there. My new desk is 31 inches deep and 55 inches wide, which is just about the perfect size right now. I'm pushing the limit of what it can hold a little bit in terms of weight, but it is sturdy enough for now, and the whole desk cost me just under $200. It was a little shaky at first, so I fastened it to the wall and that fixed that. I also built it with an Alex drawer on the right, which is a great place for my gear. I have pedals, cables, and various tools on hand and out of sight. One of the most important things was positioning the desk away from the side walls. And while I couldn't put it in a totally symmetrical position, the sound is leagues better than what it was, and the practicality of the new desk is fantastic. For monitoring, I have 2 sets of speakers. I was using the Yamaha HS50s as my main set, but after testing these older Event Project Studio 6s that I had, I really fell in love with them, and those are now my primary reference. I added the Mackie Big Knob Monitor controller as a way to switch between the speakers, and as a nice big volume knob that feels great. Under my desk, I have my custom 3-pedal system for piano, which I have videos on how I built that, as well as my MIDI Crab foot switch board and its expression pedal, which I also have videos on. And on the left, I have a wah pedal. These are all my extra control pedals ready to go anytime. I set up my electronic drum kit next to the desk, so it's easy to record with and control from the desk without taking up a whole lot of floor space. For the first time in years, I packed up the acoustic kit and put it into storage. And as sad as that is, and fun as it is to have an acoustic kit in the room, it's simply not very practical for my workflow. It takes a lot of time to set up all the mics and record things and editing acoustic drums, so it doesn't get as much use as it could anyways. Also, in my attempts to treat the acoustics of the room, I realized one of the big culprits was all of the drum shells ringing out. Now, it wasn't terribly noticeable most of the time, but I figured if I'm going to treat the acoustics of the room, I might as well take care of the obvious offender. I was usually programming drums anyways because it was just so much faster and easier, and I could do it at any time of the day. But I wanted something that was more real and more fun to play than programming on a keyboard. For me, the electronic kit is the best of both worlds. It has all the advantages of programming drums with the real ability to perform and play on an actual drum kit. It's much more fun than playing drums on a MIDI keyboard. Another issue I had with the old setup was being very limited with camera angles. I had one main angle, and it was a pain to set up the camera for other shots. I'd cobbled together a rather ingenious desk rig, consisting of a short mic stand with a boom arm, and a mic thread to 1/4-20 adapter, and a tripod ball head. I don't see people using mic stands as a makeshift tripod or lighting rig, but with a little adapter they can work quite well. For my video mic, I had a little extension arm, the kind often used for miking guitar cabinets, that was clamped onto the boom arm of the main stand. This just kept the desk tidy and made setup faster. I'm still pretty proud of this solution, but it's very liberating not to be stuck with it. Another thing I've worked on over the last year has been the lighting setup. It doesn't take a super expensive lighting rig to make good-looking video as long as you follow some general rules and experiment. I got 2 cheap photo softboxes years ago, and while the quality leaves much to be desired, they have been invaluable nonetheless. My key light is a 135-watt compact fluorescent bulb that came with the kit and provides a nice quality light and a lot of output. For some reason, an LED floodlight in the same fixture is a much harsher light that creates hard shadows, so I've stuck with the CFL. The rest of my lights are smart LED bulbs controlled by an app. I can set them to white or RGB modes and control color temperature, color, and dimming. I have a total of 6 of these around the room for different accent lights and one set to white as a fill light in my other softbox. I also have an LED strip under one desk and a cheap set of LED string lights for extra mood and ambiance. Lastly, I have an extra LED floodlight in a clamp-on shop light fixture, providing a ton of light with a blue gel over it to give the whole studio a nice wash of color. The last thing I've been working on recently is acoustic treatment. I'll have another video on that with more detail as well. This room is already reasonably dead from the carpet and just having gear everywhere. It's not really properly treated at all though. Behind the new desk, I put up 2 layers of moving blankets to cover the wall next to the speakers. This seems to work pretty well and was stuff I had on hand already. I also added a number of thick foam panels and bass traps from foambymail.com, which is not a sponsor, but they make really good foam for low prices and actually take the time to get their materials tested independently and provide the measurements. So I like that. I got 4 foam bass traps for the 2 corners closest to the speakers, as well as 2 dozen 4-inch thick panels and a dozen 3-inch thick panels. Foam gets a bad rap sometimes, and it's certainly not the ideal acoustic treatment, but you can't beat the price and ease of use. I went with the thickest foam panels they had because they offer the best absorption in the lower frequencies where this room had the worst buildup. I didn't see a huge improvement in my measurements, though it is definitely better, but I can also hear a lot less reflection in the room, and the bass is more controlled in the monitors. Coupled with some speaker EQ, I think my monitoring sounds pretty good for now, and the treatment should cut down on room in all of my talking, which you've been hearing the whole video. I'll clap a few times so you can hear the room reflections. It's not totally dead, but this is definitely better than it was before treatment. That's reasonably well treated for my needs, and I'm happy with the results I got. So stay tuned for a whole video on what I did with acoustic treatment as well as monitor EQ. I hope you've enjoyed this and maybe gotten some new ideas for your own studio. It's always a work in progress here, and since I'm just dialing in and getting used to this new layout, I'm sure there will be improvements along the way. But as always, smash like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.